It's a delight to see everyone here online and here in the Zendo in New Paltz as well. My name is Jo An. If you don't know me, and I'm one of the teachers with the Village Zendo, and I run a small affiliate Sangha here in New Paltz, New York, just a bit north of where many of you in the physical Zendo are practicing today, and perhaps some of you who are online as well. So, when we sign up for these talks, a deep bow to Ryushin, who sends out a list saying it's time to sign up, teachers, it's time to sign up senior students. And we all jump online and look at the calendar and determine a date that seems like a good time for us to give a talk. And then invariably, life has a way of getting in between that perfect time. So I work as a nurse in college health, and we just finished our semester with graduations over the weekend. And I'm also pursuing a master's degree myself. And about 2 weeks ago, my summer program started up. And I thought, yeah, it should be light, but we were right out of the gates with, and here's another 8-page paper, and here's another presentation. And so this great idea to have a Dharma talk that would be incomparably profound and infinitely subtle for you today. It may be just profound at best, and perhaps, finite in its subtleness. But that said, it's a joy to join you all. And things have changed here in New Paltz. Our heater, although it's on, is not clicking on. And so we don't have the buzz of the heater anymore. And we don't have the crackling fire that we sometimes refer to as our signature look. Here in New Paltz. That's not needed today. And it's been replaced by the sounds of the birds passing overhead, coming and going. And this morning I saw a family of deer, and there's usually at least one family that sort of lives on the Zendo property. While we are suburban, we are slightly urban and slightly rural and have woods abutting us. And so there's a pathway for the deer, and I saw 5 of them this morning, and I thought, how auspicious, this Buddhist sign of harmony, of peace and growth was, walking through my yard. So I said, well, that bodes well for a Dharma talk today. And so, everything's blooming still. And I always forget year to year what comes into bloom, the order of things. So I'm always surprised. It's nice to forget and go, oh yeah, lilacs, look at that. Oh yeah, honeysuckle, how about that? Oh, look at that. Oh, now my peonies are just waiting, a few more days perhaps, and they'll start opening up. So there's lots of blossoming that just happens over and over and over again. And that's been true in our Village Zendo as well of late. And I think, in a certain way, I look at Yakuin and I think, she sort of started it all. We had her Shisa Hosen ceremony. And shortly after that, Roshi announced her retirement, which may be sad for some of us, but of course is a joyous thing to be celebrated, her years of dedication to the Village Zendo. And then we celebrate our new abbot, Shinryu, coming in and stepping into the Besu of our past abbot, Enkyo. And then recently the empowerment of Fusho Sensei, and then Musho Hoshi, which by proxy, of course, makes Joshin's first transmitted student. So it's very exciting times, lots of blossoming happening at the Village Zendo. And I suppose, without patting myself on the back, I see our affiliates are growing and have more Sangha members at Oxbow and at the Hyannis Zendo, and now have a teacher at the Catskill Zen Circle. And we're growing right here in this very Zendo in New Paltz. And we're so fortunate to have this practice. And I was struck in Shinryu Roshi's talk recently about his expressing, how do we return, how do we pay this debt of gratitude that we have? What can we possibly do to pay back the gratitude we have for this practice? And I can't help but think of Joshin and Enkyo Roshi opening their apartment on Washington Place twice a day and allowing people to come in, getting rid of their own living room and their own space to have a life together so that they could serve the community and sit together. How do you pay back that debt of gratitude? Someone who gives up their own home. And we talk about home leaving, shukkei tokudo is that someone ordains. And yet, what is it like to, my internet is unstable. Thumbs up if you can still hear me. Can you hear me? Yes, okay, good. What is it like to not leave your home, but to open it for the public to come in and share with you? And that's what Enkyo Roshi and Joshin Roshi did for us so many years ago. So how do we repay that debt of gratitude? And in the recent talks by both Enkyo and by Shinryu, they shared a bit about their history of practice, how they kind of came to practice. There were parts of Shinryu's talk that being friends with him for so many years and Dharma brothers that I didn't know about. So it was really nice to sort of hear him share his history of coming to the Buddha Dharma. And he spoke specifically at one moment about a moment in college when he had met Katagiri Roshi and the impact of meeting this Zen teacher had on him. And while he said he didn't really remember the specifics of what Katagiri had spoken about or what was there in the teachings that he offered that day, what he noticed was he was in a room, and this is Shinryu's words, with a man who didn't leak, who had no leaks. And I thought it was such an interesting turn of phrase to describe bearing witness to someone who doesn't leak. And I thought, wow, yeah, I know what that looks like. I've seen that in our own teachers at the Village Zendo and elsewhere. But I couldn't help but recall this idea of not leaking and comparing it to a quote I'd seen recently by Mayazumi Roshi, in our own lineage of him, and I'm misquoting this, I'm paraphrasing terribly, but saying, make your mind, the front door and the back door of your mind, leave it open so that thoughts can come and go, and you do not have to serve them tea. And so I sort of thought about the flip side of that container that holds everything. What if the container has no bottom? If our practice of zazen is to sort of remove the ability to contain and allow everything to come right through us, hold it, fully hold it, but not be attached to it. So I fell in with the hippies in high school. That was the group that was most accessible to me as a queer young kid. I had to find a group that felt protective and safe and a place that I could come out. And this was, the early 80s. So it was a bit different at that time to come out. And I found hippie friends who I'm still friends with to this day, who took me in and allowed me to be who I was. And because of that group of people, I was exposed, kind of like Shinryu, to a lot of Eastern philosophy and writing. And so there was a lot of, the Tao Te Ching, I think Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind might have made it in there at one point. But certainly I had read, what was very popular at that time was The Myth of Freedom in the Way of Meditation by Trungpa Rinpoche. And so I first really encountered the Dharma probably around 83. And I had a friend in high school whose family had a lake house up in Vermont, and it was very close to Karme Choling monastery. And so we walked over and knocked on the door and said, hey, can we sit? And they offered us beginning instruction, and we sat a few periods with them. And on the way home to his lake house, I threw up. I leaned up against a tree and I puked my guts out. And I think it was the first time that I recognized, what was going on, really took a look. And it was so frightening and almost reprehensible, to take a look at myself fully and to stop, that it turned my stomach, this dose of the medicine I was seeking was almost too much for me in that moment. But a seed was planted, a very important seed was planted. So off I went to college, identifying as a Buddhist, because I sat for an hour and a half at Karme Chöling Monastery, and I had a bunch of books. I showed up with a lot of books, so and had that hippie look. So I was a Buddhist for all intents and purposes, and I was encountering fellow Buddhists who had a practice very similar to mine in college, a practice of the right books on their bookshelf, and maybe an encounter with their own mind that potentially made them throw up too. But I went to college for dance, and I pursued a degree in dance, and of course, the pursuits that are seen in conservatories of the arts are not always so wholesome. So Buddhist practice was sort of set aside for the practices of many other sort of mind-altering, ideas and things that I undertook in my college years. But that the Buddha Dharma was always there. And my senior year, that way-seeking mind, a friend of mine who I was in college with, who actually is attached to our Sangha, Guido, Paul Thompson, and May is his mother-in-law. And so we had a connection, and he went off to Japan and ordained, and kind of came back and said, Jo An, you know what you need to do. You need to sit. And this was at a time when I really did need to sit. I was, just left college, dancing professionally. The dance community was being devastated by the AIDS crisis. We just every day, Graham company members, Limon company members, City Ballet members, ABT members were dying, left and right. My dance community and my gay community was in crisis. And sure enough, it turned out that I too became HIV positive. And this was at a time that I think of, pre-protease inhibitors. So there's a drug, the protease inhibitor, that once it came out and became available was the game changer on the AIDS crisis. So if you were diagnosed, pre-protease inhibitor, there was a pretty good chance that you were going to die. That was, kind of the reality of the situation. So receiving that diagnosis, back in the early 90s, I was quite sure this is it, and that's when, practice became important. And, I think we all are seeking this medicine of mindfulness, and we all come here, those of us on screen, those of us in the Village Zendo here in the New Paltz Zen Center, seeking medicine. And we may not know what we need that medicine for, but we feel a sense of discomfort, that first noble truth of, there's a bump in the ride. And sometimes the bump in the ride has to be big enough, like our own mortality, to actually bring us to practice, or the mortality of those around us, or the mortality of our ideas or relationships that are so devastating that we need to come and examine our mind. I'm not sure, maybe some people come to the Zendo because things are going so swimmingly that they want to sit on the cushion and examine how swimmingly things are going for themselves. But I think initial practice, more often than not, is stimulated by that first noble truth hitting us really, really hard. And so I was sitting with Roshi in Washington Place, and she had a group of mindfulness of sitters at GMHC, the Gay Men's Health Crisis. And so she had bought a bunch of Zafu and Zabuton, and they were stuck in a metal cabinet, I think on the second floor of GMHC. And she had sort of had many other things to do. So she turned to Isan, who sat with us for many years, Isan and myself, and said, "You're in charge. You're going to do GMHC." And I don't think I'd been sitting with the Village Zendo a year. I certainly hadn't taken precepts, but I was showing up. And so she said, "You're in charge." And off I went to sit there. And, I'm not sure that Roshi had given me this job knowingly, knowing the medicine that it was going to offer me. But, I was sitting with people who were facing the same thing I was facing, who felt, yep, I don't know if tomorrow is going to be a day that I'm alive. I don't know if next week I'll be alive, if my partner will be alive. So it was treating uh, my disease, my discontent, my uncomfortability with what was, treating it with thusness, asking me to face the very thing that was so disturbing and so scary for me, to sit in the room with it quietly. And I think we're all doing that, so that profound service that she offered me to practice intimately with my diagnosis, intimately with my inevitable death. Fortunately, I made it to a place where protease inhibitors came along, and here I am, for the unforeseeable future. But to practice in that way, to practice as if this may be the last period of zazen that we have the opportunity to sit, is a strong practice. So we come to this practice seeking, medication for our diseased state. And that very medication is just paying attention to this moment, moment after moment, whether we're counting the breath or whether we're sitting shikantaza or doing koan practice, we're bringing our awareness to this moment over and over and over again, and developing a muscle of attention and of awareness that allows us to stay present to discomfort, to our own discomfort. So I get to work in college health with this organization called MIA. They used to be called Koru, K-O-R-U, the Maori word for an unfurling bud. But they wisely changed their name to MIA, the Mindfulness Institute for Emerging Adults, and they teach mindfulness to college students because they see the importance of mindfulness for that population. I think it's important for all populations, but I do see in the college setting with this wild amount of distraction that we battle now. One of the founders of MIA, Holly Rogers, who's a psychotherapist and a doctor who wrote this book called The Mindful 20-something, in a recent meeting said there's research that now says the human mind pays less attention than the goldfish mind. And I was really struck by that. I haven't looked to go on the major databases to prove the truth of this research, but it seems about right. Working with a college population, they're in the phone, they're completely squirrel all the time. Something is happening and they're distracted, and I'm distracted. And post-COVID particularly, this population is wildly distracted. So in nursing, we talk about the 5 rights of medication administration. It's got to be the right patient, the right time, the right route, the right dose, and the right, right route, right dose, right drug, and the right medication. I see you laughing at me, Allie. The doctors in the crowd are going, uh-oh. And do you really do those 5 rights every time you pass a medication? Yes, I do. But we look at medication of mindfulness. We're our own doctor. We have to determine, what's the right time, what's the right dose, how much, and yet there's something to be said for sitting still for a period of time. The question came up about attention with, in the syllabus, do we really insist on 10 minutes for these students every day? Because they're coming back going, I just can't do it. I don't have the time. I don't have the bandwidth for 10 minutes of meditation daily. And yeah, yes, it takes a little time to watch our mind. It takes a few minutes to settle down and to see what's going on. So yeah, Do 5 minutes if that's the right dose for you right now. Do a minute if that's the only dose you can tolerate. But maybe you need a dose that makes you throw up. Maybe you need a dose that really hits you strong so that you can step away for a few years and then come back and find the right dose for yourself. You know, who knows? Certainly not me. Uh, so this practice is determination to face our discomfort, to face our boredom, without distraction. And the Zen school advocates for high doses of that. That's pretty much what we do. And it's like weightlifting. You know, we build strength over time. Practicing, paying attention to this moment. So when heavier weights come, when bigger lifts come, we can pay attention to those as well, and stay present to that discomfort. So once Great Master Ma and Pai Chang saw wild ducks flying by, and Ma asked him, "What is that?" And Pai Chang said, "Wild ducks." And the master said, "Ah, where have they gone?" And Pai Chang said, "They flew away." So Master Ma pain. Just lost my connection. Did you hear me? uh, ah, can you hear me? Jifu's saying yes. Okay, good. And so Pai Chang asked him, or Master Ma asked him, when have they ever flown away? He's so grandmotherly, and they describe it in the commentary, Master Ma, so grandmotherly, inviting Pai Chang back into the absolute twice. What is that? Giving him an opportunity to express his understanding. But Pai Chang said, "It's wild ducks. Where have they gone?" Again, gently pulling him back. Where have they gone? So, "Oh, they've flown away." And then he grabs him by the nose. Right here, right now. When have they ever flown away? I was struck, there's been so many good talks lately. And recently Ugetsu gave a talk talking about digitizing all of her media from the AIDS era, which I might argue we're still in, but from the AIDS era, when she was videotaping and active with ACT UP, as was I, and a lot of footage she was watching going, all these people have gone. They're all dead. They were there on the street fighting, for their lives and the lives of the people they loved, and they're all gone now. But when have they ever flown away? When have they ever flown away? They're right here with us, not just in a digital image. They're right here with us. If we practice this moment mind. When we're not practicing this moment mind, they're not here. So I took the liberty of sort of expanding upon the poem, the verse, and making it my own that goes with this. But before I do that, I want to talk briefly about paying that debt of gratitude. Tomorrow, I believe, is Work for Dharma Day. So, how do we pay a debt of gratitude? Perhaps most importantly for us, regardless of our financial standings, is to pay attention to this moment. So if that's what you can do that. But if you can in some way pay back to the Village Zendo that debt of gratitude for their leaving the front and back door open for so long for us, whether it was in a personal apartment or Varick Street or Broadway or now, where you are right now, to pay back that debt, to take one day's salary if you can afford that and give that to them. Maybe 1 hour if that's what you can afford to give that to the Village Zendo. It's one of our biggest fundraisers. And it's so important that we can continue to do this work and continue to bloom as we have been blooming. So I encourage you to partake in that. There, I did the sell. No one asked me to do it. It's heartfelt, but I think that if we can support the Village Zendo, we should. So I'm going to leave you with my take on the verse. What is that? Where did they go? Flown away. Pain and clarity flown away. And yet with us now. When have they ever flown away? Seeking medicine to address loss, encounter discomfort, to see dissatisfaction's source. Building resilience to face reality in the face of reality. Transformed. Vessels that hold nothing are unable to leak. Tea has been served and not a drop spilled.